What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So we now have the BMW M3 Sport Evolution. We now have the Sentinel Classic. That was probably a bad joke, but I am actually glad this car is in the game, though I do know a lot of players have been waiting for it, and this is probably one of my favorite body styles on the M3. This thing is so dang beautiful, man. I love it. Now, a few things about this, though. If you did want to get this car, you will have to have the Year 1 pass for it. Do keep in mind, though, if you don't, this car should be available next Wednesday to buy it, which I would say they normally do that with most of them. On top of that, we also have a good amount of customization for it, so if you guys are into putting a wide body on this thing, you can actually do it. We're also going to have over 19 different bumpers for it. Is that yellow lights, bro? Kind of dope. Let's add that to it. Then we also have those, and I'm going to guess right now that most of the bumpers will probably change a bit, go back to yellow. There it is. So at least the car does have a good amount of customization. Also, I am curious, by the way, guys, would you like to see more customization from different cars in the game? What I mean by that is more supercars getting more customization. Then again, I would say most players are like, no, Block, we don't want any more new cars. We want old cars, which honestly, I can't blame you. Having more classic cars like the M3 here would be pretty dang dope. Look at that wide body, man. That actually looks really nice. The fitment is also on point. It looks so good. Now, I could actually add the wide body to the M3, but I'm actually going to leave the car basically stock for the most part because I love the body design on this thing. After that, though, you can actually add 47 other rims to the vehicle. If I had to guess, most players are probably going to leave the stock rims on it because they actually look the best. The rest of them are going to look kind of ugly with a really weird chrome looking finish, and it's still mind-blowing to me. We are actually in the Motorfest game right now, guys, 10 months into it, and we still can't color our rims. What is that, bro? Seriously. After that, though, let's move over to the next thing is the caliper color. For me, let's go with, how about let's do red to match like the siding part of it. That might look kind of dope. And then moving over to the side mirrors, we have the carbon fiber ones and then the tiny mirrors. You know, to be real, I kind of think the regular ones look fine. I don't think it needs carbon. Then we have these skirts, which brings that thing down all the way. Not liking that. Then we have the rear part being wide body. Fitment is again on point, really liking how they did it. Not like GTA wide body kits that are way off, which is something I'm glad this game learned from. Moving over to the rear wings, we have the spoilers. Let's see if we have some big wings you can put on it. What is that, bro? That reminds me of like the RWB wing or something, the way it looks, kind of cool. Then we have the big duck wing, we have that one, and then there's the big wing you can put on it. Funny thing is, I don't think I would actually put a big wing on this car. I mean, the regular one looks good, and I would say most players might leave the regular wing on this with like a body kit, but then again, if you have the wide body kit, this one might actually make some sense. It is a bit too big for this car, though. Not sure how I feel about that. Then we also have 17 rear bumpers. Let's check these out. So this is the stock one. Then we have the darker, like the smoke taillights. Then we have the, what in the world? Um, that looks kind of interesting. Then we have the next one, which is going to bring the exhaust tips up a bit. Doesn't look terrible. Then we have the dual exhaust, liking the way that one looks. Ooh, that one's kind of dope. I actually like that. I also like the double exhaust, though. Kind of adds kind of like a unique feeling to it, even though it still brings out like the stock version of it. Then again, we also have really big exhaust tips on there, which do look kind of dope. And look at that diffuser. Okay, now it's kind of getting a little bit weird. Let me fast forward to see what it does. Changes that, smokes the taillights out again. Then we have the same thing. Okay, so they're basically all the same thing, just changing it, smoking the taillights out, adding different things on the exhaust tips and stuff like that. But why don't we add this one to it to kind of give it a crazy, like, upgraded type of feel? And then moving over to the next thing, the interior color. So for me, I have to go with the red interior. Now let's look at this here. That looks kind of dope. And I also like this. Let's do this one, and then we can have the Alcantara. Can't do anything with that, guys. Look at the detail in this car. Also, let me know in the comments below, do you guys like older style cars like this with the interior, or do you prefer the new cars with the big screens in the middle of it? Probably going to be a pretty easy answer there. But similar to the other videos, though, let's go do an outside look of this thing right now and do a top speed test. Okay, so spawning outside now, looking at the M3 Sport Evolution. This thing not only looks great, but it also sounds great. I do admit it does actually sound pretty dang dope. Now, what I did see online though is this BMW does have an inline four-cylinder, which is definitely not going to stop it back in the 90s from being quick. I mean, that was probably a pretty dope motor. I think it was a 2.3 liter from what I saw, but looking at the interior, guys, I don't know what it is, but I love the classic look of the interior. Now, this might come down to the fact that driving something like this is probably going to almost feel like a time capsule. No, and that might actually come down to the fact that driving something like this car would most likely feel like a time capsule. Like if you actually drove this M3 then jumped in a brand new one, it is definitely going to be insanely different. Funny thing is you can actually look at something like the new M4 in this game, which is going to have a very similar interior to the new M3. Then you actually jump into this car and you're like, bro, look at this thing. I mean, it does look dope. I've actually seen two of these in real life, and I love this body style. Also, ever had this car only put 6,000 miles on it? That is kind of disappointing. But we also will see like the temperature gauge there on the side. I also see like the knobs and all that. Can't really see the stick shift because the guy's arm's in the way. But I do like the way the interior has like the red parts of it. Really fits the overall look of it. Have to admit, it's a pretty dope looking car though. Bro, we somehow got an entire herd of M3s over here. Isn't that something? I was legit sitting here looking up a few things about this car, and boom, bro, I have an entire thing of M3s around me. That is awesome. I love how many people are actually driving this car. I do admit the wide body kit on that one does look pretty dang dope. Now, as per usual, though, I did want to do a quick top speed run on this car, though, to see what it can do. Keep in mind, though, this thing is a Tier 1 vehicle, so I'm guessing it's probably only going to do around 180 or so miles an hour, maybe 190 miles an hour. But would you guys actually like the option to have a car do around, let's say, 220, or, let's say you have a street tier 1 vehicle. Maybe you like that thing a lot. What if you can actually upgrade that car to a tier 2? I mean, we are seeing that with some of the Summit vehicles currently, like the Impala, and even that Z28 from Hoonigan, so who knows, maybe it's possible. Well, let's see right now with a top speed run. Let's see. Okay, oh, 195. We're getting somewhere, bro. 195 miles an hour. See, that right there is going to make this car fairly viable for one reason. If you are doing something like a grand race, something like the Civic Type R, which I love that car, but it does 185 or 186 miles an hour, whereas something like the Ford Focus does 195 to like 198 miles an hour. It's just better, man. Going around 7 to 10 miles per hour more is going to make that car that much better, especially in an event or like a longer race in a summit. You're going to notice around 10 miles per hour is actually a pretty big difference. So I figured with this car though, why not jump into one of the races with more turns on it to see what this car can actually do. Now there's a few things I did want to talk about, mainly regarding the tier 1 category and most likely not really using these cars all that often. We all do know right now, guys, a lot of people are asking for classic cars in the game, which don't get me wrong, I also want them. I do like having the M3 Sport Evolution. I really do love the body style on this car, and I do know players have been asking for this thing, and you can also make it wide body, which is so dang dope. The issue though is a lot of players are probably going to want to run the fastest cars in the game, or at least cars that are going to be insanely quick. Something like the M3 here is probably going to be the kind of car you'd most likely cruise around in, and you're probably not going to be racing it. I mean, yeah, you could probably jump on a grand race and stuff with it, because if it is a tier 1 event, then yeah, you could probably use it. If you have to do a tier 1 race in a summit, you could probably run this car and it might be pretty dang good. The issue though is a lot of players are going to want to pick faster cars, or at least some of the best ones in that said class, and if they were to add cars, let's say the M3 for example, and it's not good, then no one is going to use it, so boom, we have a new car that basically nobody runs. Personally, one thing I would really like though is if you did want to test out a car on PvP, for example the M3 here, why not add PvP events to where I can do only a street tier 1 race to see how this car might stack up against other ones. Specifically something like the Ford Focus RS that has basically been owning the tier 1 category in basically everything. It's kind of hilarious because not only in summits is that going to be the best option, but most of the time in grand races everybody runs the exact same car. And when I was actually doing some grand races before, I was using the Honda Civic. That car handles so dang well, but the overall top speed on it already puts it at a disadvantage. Luckily with the M3 though, this thing is going to do around 195 miles an hour, which is instantly going to put it on par with the Ford Focus. The issue with this, guys, I feel like a lot of players might like the old classic cars, but at the same time a lot of players like going quick or going fast, so they're probably going to pick hypercars and stuff like that, which is probably why we get so many of them. Funny thing is, I actually have noticed we mainly get hypercars tier 2, and then once in a while tier 1. Many of the other classes in the game, I hate to say this, they just don't get enough love. Anyone else kind of feel that way, like off-road and stuff like that, rallycross, rally raid? We basically don't get anything new in those categories. Yeah, like they add some stuff. We are getting like the Jeep in the playlist next week, but let's be real though, a lot of players already have like the Jeep 392. That one's basically a two-door that's coming. And I just feel like a lot of players are not going to run those cars that much, which can also come down to the fact there's not that many events and stuff for them. Now I am going to be genuinely curious on this. Do you guys actually want more classic cars in the game, or do you want more hypercars? This is probably going to be a pretty hilarious question, because if I had to guess, most players are probably going to come in and go blocked. We want more classic, man. We do not need more hypercars. There's too many of them. And you know what? I have to agree in some ways. We get a lot of hypercars. I feel like having more classic vehicles like the M3 here, like older vehicles, would be a pretty nice touch to the game. Even though a lot of players don't like going 180 or like 190 miles an hour, because the overall sense of speed in this game isn't the greatest, you are most likely going to want to use hypercars, or at least, you know, tier 2 vehicles. But what if they actually added something into the game to where you can actually change some of the tier 1 vehicles and make them a tier 2? Like, I feel like an upgraded M3 like this one could easily be a tier 2 vehicle doing like 240 or so, 230 miles an hour. I mean, in tier 1 it does what, 195, so what is going to be another 30 to 40 miles an hour on top of it? I feel like something like that could work. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Overall, though, I will admit right now, my thoughts on the M3, this thing is really nice. I like it. Handles great. It does actually seem to be pretty dang quick for a tier 1 vehicle. And on top of that, it's also going to be a car everybody has been waiting for. Really fun car to drive. I think it will actually do pretty dang good in PvP for the most part. Once PvP actually changes, I will try to jump on and do a race in it. Even though when I did check it last time, it had nothing to do with tier 1, so of course you're going to have to wait until tier 1 pops up, because we can't pick specific classes yet. And I would say most players, including myself, really want that option. Let's hope we actually get that in year 2. Overall, though, I would definitely recommend picking up the M3, guys. Also, a quick reminder, if you do not have the year 1 pass, this car will be out next week. At least that's how they normally do it. Then you will be able to buy this thing. Is it going to be expensive? I'm gonna guess right now and say maybe 500,000 bucks or something. I don't really see this car being all that expensive, because it's a tier 1 and not like a hypercar.